Привет, друзья! G'day guys, welcome to another Soviet lens review. Today we are going to be having a bit of a chat and seeing what your top questions are when it comes to Soviet lenses. So let's get into it. Alrighty, first up we have a question here from David. So David says, I just received an Interstar 50 silver lens, 50mm f3.5 Zenit and an L39 to NEX adapter to use with my Sony a7R II camera, but cannot focus it no matter what aperture I use. Help. Well, I've got some good news, David. Got some bad news as well. The good news is the fix is very, very easy. The bad news is the fix is going to involve you purchasing another Interstar lens. Because what you have purchased is basically a rangefinder lens. I've actually got an Interstar 61 LD here, which is going to be very similar to that Interstar 50 that you purchased, because this lens right here, it actually has, let's go ahead and show you guys right there. It actually has an L39 to M42 adapter on it. So as you can see there, this little black ring, this is the L39 to M42 adapter. Now, that black ring, it is going to let you mount the lens to your camera correctly, but it will never have infinity focus. And that's because these were lenses designed for rangefinders. The minimum flange distance, or the design distance between the flange to the actual camera sensor or the film back in the day is going to be completely different. So the long and short of it is that you actually are not able to mount this sort of a lens and have it focus to infinity, at least not in its natural state. There are some lenses that you can take apart and, like, you know, shave off bits of the mount and that sort of thing to make them focus to infinity. But particularly when you're talking about an Interstar 50, such a cheap lens, really, my recommendation is to go back to the drawing board, get yourself an Interstar 52 with an M42 mount. So in the eBay description or wherever you're buying this from, you want to make sure that it has a native M42 mount. You do not want to see the words M39 or L39 anywhere on that description. So hopefully that helps you. Let me know how you go with your new Interstar 52. Okay, next up we've got a question from RVKBRW who says, thanks for the excellent video. How to fit a Jupiter 37A 3.5 135 lens onto a Nikon DSLR D5300, keeping in mind infinity focus. Currently, I'm not able to focus to infinity. Again, I've got some bad news for you, RVK. So the Jupiter 37A and all M42 mount lenses, they are notoriously not great if you have a Nikon DSLR, because the flange distance for Nikon F-mount lenses is actually just slightly too much for you to be able to fit an M42 adapter and have it focus to infinity. So long and short, what that's going to mean is that even if you have an adapter, assumedly like this is an M42 to Nikon F-mount adapter, your lens will still never reach infinity. And the only way your lens will reach infinity is if you buy an adapter with a piece of glass in it that allows for infinity focus. I used to do that back when I had a Nikon D700 and D3400. And ever since moving away from that, I never want to do it again. So unfortunately, my recommendation there is to go ahead and pick yourself up a Kalena 5N, 100mm f2.5. Pick up some native or closer to native Nikon F-mount glass, because shooting adapted lenses, if you buy a infinity adapter for your Nikon DSLR, it will just never look that good. Even on telephoto lenses where that Nikon infinity adapter will kind of sort of work, it's still not that great. So yeah, just go for a different lens or get a different camera. I'm sorry, I couldn't be too much more helpful than that. Okay, next up we've got Tech Legend who says, great review. One quick question. If I already have the MC Jupiter 37A, is the Tier 11A worth the triple price tag? Very good question, and I wish I did have a Tier 11A, but I've done a lot of reading on it, so I feel as though I can pretty confidently answer this. Now, the important thing you said is that you have the MC Jupiter 37A, and now the MC, the multi-coated version, does have a higher resolution on paper than the non-multi-coated version, which is actually what I have here. No MC anywhere on the lens body itself. So I would say that the multi-coated Jupiter 37A, you're going to get everything that you need to get from a 135mm lens. And really the only reason I would pick up a TR11A after that is if you just want to add to your collection. The TR11A, obviously it has that f2.8 slightly brighter aperture. You're going to get a tiny bit more depth of field, but really the difference between f2.8 and f3.5, particularly on full frame, is just not really worth it. And the MC Jupiter 37A has great light transmittance, so you're not really going to notice that, slight, what is it, maybe half a stop or so of light extra coming into the lens. So my advice is, it's probably not worth triple the price tag. Stick with your MC Jupiter 37A because that MC version is actually the priciest of all the Jupiter 37As that you can find because it is also the best. Next up, we've got Raphael. Raphael asks, what are my favorite lenses for street photography? Favorite Soviet lenses? Also, what camera bodies do you pair them with? Well, actually, I've just been doing a little bit of street photography in Melbourne, Raphael, and it's a bit tricky. It's a bit of a mix. I love my Interstar 52 50mm f3.5 for street photography because it is just so discreet, so small, so light. You can carry this around with you, on the street all day, and you're not going to get tired, and you're going to get some great shots with it. But I've got to say that recently, this lens which I'm shooting on right now, the Vario Zenitar K 25 to 45mm f2.8 to f3.5 is a fantastic street photography lens, particularly when paired with a mega adapter and the Nikon Z6 because number one, it's a zoom, and zooms are always helpful. Sometimes you want a 25mm shot, sometimes you want a shot that's closer to 50mm. The Vario Zenitar allows me to do that. And as well as that, it's actually very sharp in the center of the frame, and it's pretty sharp when you stop it down as well. And it's just overall a very kind of modern feeling lens. In most scenarios. So I love the Vario Zenitar K for street photography. I love the Interstar 52. I also like my Mir 24M for street photography because it is 35mm, it's f2, particularly when you've got some close-up subjects, you can get quite a bit of background separation with that 35mm f2 kind of focal length aperture combination. But when it comes to the second part of your question, which is what bodies do I shoot on, it's got to be full frame. There is no way I would shoot any of these Soviet lenses on a crop sensor. I'm sorry for anyone who has a crop sensor camera, but these lenses, they were designed for full frame cameras, and that's really where they shine. You want that beautiful bokeh wherever you can, and you want that nice central sharpness, which is, it shows up amongst all Soviet lenses when you're shooting them on full frame. So any full frame camera, any full frame mirrorless camera with sensor stabilization is probably a good bet. I love my Nikon Z6 because it has great kind of manual focus tools that I use to focus with. As well as that, I also shoot sometimes on the Mega adapter, which, well, as of right now, it gives me autofocus with my Soviet lenses. Autofocus can be a little bit dodgy at times, as you're probably seeing here. But look, at the end of the day, it's still a pretty good adapter and pairing. So yeah, if you haven't picked one up already, I definitely say go for one of the Nikon Z lines that has in-body image stabilization in it. Okay, Stephen asks next, more of an opinion than a question, but what do you think are the most over or underhyped Soviet lenses? And also, what's my favorite uncoated lens? He loves the pre-war Fed 10, but wants to try with another lens. Okay, that is a tough one, Stephen. So the most overhyped Soviet lens, in my opinion, is the Helios 44. I've got a Helios 44M. I've also got the Helios 81N. And yeah, sure, it's a pretty cool lens when you pick it up and you get the swirly bokeh for your first couple of shots, but I'm not too much of a fan of it outside of that. I just think it's not that versatile unless you're doing, a portrait where you've got something directly in the center of the frame and you've got just nothing but depth of field around the corners of your subject, around the corners of the frame. It's just not that versatile. So I would say Helios 44 for me is definitely most overhyped Soviet lens. Now, when it comes to underhyped, the Mir 24N is actually the most underhyped because the Mir 24N, as opposed to the M, is cheap. You can get a Mir 24M 35mm f2 for basically Nikon mount. It's Kiev mount, but it's basically Nikon mount for a bit over $100 US. And the quality of lens that you get for $100, as long as you get a good copy that's not, you know, stuffed up, is going to be very, very impressive. So Mir 24N is my recommendation. Very sharp in the center of the frame, super cheap, and a really usable focal length. 35mm f2, I love it. When it comes though to pre-war / uncoated lenses, I've got to say I don't have too many favorites when it comes to uncoated lenses. Just about every lens that I use is coated. I've heard of a few good things about some of the pre-war Feds, like you mentioned. I think there were a few pre-war maybe Interstars as well. The Leica copies back in the day. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have any insights there. So yeah, let me know. Maybe you're the current expert on pre-war uncoated Soviet optics, but maybe it's another excuse for me to add to my collection. Okay, next up, we've got a question here from Brad. Says, got like sub to a Perth YouTuber. Have you compared the Helios 81N to the Nikon 52 or 51.8 various flavors? Any features that differentiate the Helios from the Nikons? Well, Brad, I don't have any of those Nikons, but I have used the 51.8, I believe, on my mate's Nikon D850. He used to take that everywhere. That was kind of his go-to lens. I love it. It's a great lens, nice and sharp, and you know, beautiful bokeh as well. I think the main things you're going to see when comparing those, particularly more modern Nikons, to something like the Helios 81N, is a lot more edge-to-edge sharpness around the frame. You are going to see slightly more contrast in the colors without dialing it up in post. And overall, you're going to notice that the Nikon just looks a little bit newer. And that's not a good thing, not a bad thing. Well, I guess mainly it's a good thing, but it certainly doesn't always necessarily mean it's a good thing. And that is the main thing that you will notice shooting with the Nikon compared to the Helios 81N. The Helios, I would say, you know, take it out for some portraits, take it out for some kind of more artistic work. You know, maybe that will give you the edge if you're like entering a kind of creative photo competition that, you know, maybe needs some bokeh in your shot. Helios 81N, going to be great for that. It's going to be great for video as well, because it's very easy to declick the aperture of the Helios 81N. I've done it to mine. And yeah, so now it is a completely declicked aperture lens. So I can use it for video. It's pretty good in that regard as well. It's also smaller than those Nikons because it has no autofocus. Next up, a question from Blaze PSI. Is there any other versions of the Jupiter? Planning to get one? So I think I've done a review on 3 different Jupiter lenses. This is one of them. This is the Jupiter 37A, 135mm. I've also reviewed the Jupiter 11, which is a 135mm f4, a slightly earlier design than this one. I've also reviewed the Jupiter 38, which is a very rare lens that was used by the Soviet traffic police towards the fall of the Soviet Union. So Jupiter was really just a moniker for whenever the Soviets made a lens design that was kind of sonar based. And that's all that Jupiter means when you're looking at it in the context of Soviet lenses. So there's plenty of Jupiters. Most of them are pretty good because again, they come from that sonar design. I would say that the MC Jupiter 37A or 37M is probably one of the best Jupiters that you can pick up. There's also, of course, the Jupiter 9, fantastic portraiture lens, 85 f2, I believe. I don't have a Jupiter 9 yet. Really want one. And if you're picking up a Jupiter 9, then you can actually find one produced in what's now Ukraine in the Arsenal plant called the Jupiter 9 Automat or Automatic. And that is the Jupiter 9 that you should pick up because it's cheap and it is basically as sharp as the much more expensive KMZ version. But hopefully, might be getting a review of one of those soon. So stay tuned for that. But there we go, guys. That's been a bunch of questions. Hopefully you have learned something new about Soviet lenses today. I have had fun answering them. And if you have any questions for next time, drop a comment below. Remember to subscribe though, hit that like button as well. I always appreciate whenever you share or like any of these videos here. That's why I do it. But until the next time, thanks for watching and I'll see you then.